everyone, Doc T here with another episode of the Horses Advocate podcast. Thanks for joining me. This is a third in a series, and I didn't realize it when I started that, but I've titled a podcast in the past called A Crisis in Equine Veterinary Medicine, and I decided to dig into it a little bit more, and I came up with the last two podcasts. The first one was More New Vets, but Less Horse Vets. I wanted to discuss how we're growing our community of schools that create new veterinarians and how that's affecting us as horse owners in the number of horse vets that are being created between now and the next 10 years. The second podcast I had was Integrity in Veterinary Medicine, where I talk about who we are as veterinarians and how important it is to have this integrity that may not be built into a veterinarian, but can come with our elders. And the elders help us become better veterinarians through experience. Because in all medical fields, it's called the practice of. And why we call it the practice of veterinary medicine is because every veterinarian out there is learning as they go, because every case is different. But I wanted to talk about today 3 articles that just came out in the American Veterinary Medical Association News. The first one is titled Gap Shrinks Between New Graduate Overall Veterinary Salaries. The subtitle, Debt to Income Ratio hits 1.4 to 1, but could be on its way up. The next one I want to talk about, and this is in the same email that was sent to me, was Midlevel Practitioner Proposal Secures Enough Votes in Colorado. The subtitle is Full Implementation of Veterinary Professional Associate Position Will Take Years. And the third one was titled Federal Appeals Court Reverses Texas VCPR Ruling, which is the veterinary client-patient relationship. And what makes all of these just fascinating articles to finalize this 3-part series is we as horse owners are being pushed back further in the eyes of our veterinary medical training. We are being driven by corporate veterinary practices that are looking for, just for lack of a better word, manpower, but it's mostly woman power. People, they're just looking for people to fill the positions so that when you bring your dog or cat, you'll be willing to come into this veterinary clinic and have it taken care of. But us horse owners that are out on the farm are getting less and less common. The population of horses is diminishing, and the attractiveness of people to become horse vets is diminishing, which is all based really on money. So my urge to you is to become your horse's advocate, to learn how to prevent most diseases, not so much because a veterinarian coming out is going to not know what they're doing, although I touched on that. It's more that we just aren't going to have enough equine veterinarians with experience to handle all the cases that we allow to come to veterinary attention. In other words, as a horse owner, we have to become the best advocate we can for our horses to prevent disease and injuries. And it can be so simple as just looking at the walls of every stall to make sure there's no nails sticking out or boards that are loose, going outside and looking at the fencing, just the surroundings. What are we doing to make sure that they don't get hurt? It's not a perfect world, but out in the real world, there are going to be plenty of things that cause damage to the horse. But while they're in our care, we have to minimize that. The best, almost obvious example, and I just saw it again the other day, was somebody put their harrow, which is a device that's pulled behind a tractor to smooth out all the uneven surfaces of a riding arena. And they had left it in the grass, and the grass had grown up. So if you weren't looking, it would be invisible. And if a horse ever got loose and ran through that, they could really injure themselves. So it's the simple things, but also how we feed them to make sure that metabolism is great so they don't become ill, making sure that our horses that go to horse shows and come back are put in a quarantine area or that the horses that stay all the time, especially our broodmares, are kept in a quarantine area. So disease doesn't just hop between the horse that just came back from the horse show to the mare that you've tried so hard to get pregnant, and then she gets a herpes virus and aborts. So there's a lot of things that you can do, but I just wanted to give you a little bit more motivation in this final of 3 series on the horse veterinarian population, specifically equine. So the first article was the gap shrinks between new graduate overall veterinary salaries. And that dual title talks about what the starting salary is now for all veterinarians leaving vet school. And it has risen since 2001. It has just risen exponentially. Well, maybe that might not be the technical term, but it's really grown. So now the starting salary is $130,000, which is very interesting because I've said in the past, I've seen signs on the back of trucks saying, drive this rig and earn $2,500 a week, which I believe is $125,000 for a 50-week year. So, and they don't have to spend as much in learning how to drive a rig as we as veterinarians need to spend to get our education, which is what this is all about, this article. So they're starting 130,000 and 60% of them are going into full-time employment. And about 30% are going into advanced education, such as residencies and internships. And 6% have gotten no offers and 3% are part-time offers. It's insinuating that we have reached capacity, but the projections, as I've stated 2 podcasts ago, is that we're going to increase our need for small animal veterinarians through these corporate things. They also added to this 130,000 mean starting average. 61% had a sign-on bonus, so they got a big chunk of cash, or 40% had a moving allowance, 18% had loan repayment, that's huge, and 3% got a housing allowance. Basically, they had a place for the vet to stay. Here's the mix of the new graduates. And this was not consistent with what I've been telling you, what the AAEP has been telling me. But they said 73% of all new graduates went into companion animal. Now, that companion animal is not well defined. It's obviously dogs and cats, but I don't know what else makes up a companion animal. A lot of people believe horses are companion animals, and some people think they're reptiles, and spiders are companion animals. So I don't know what that means. They also said 10% went into mixed practice. So I think that's just any animal that walks through the door. So that's really not most of us horse owners, but it could be. It could also be goats. I don't know. There's gophers. Who knows? But they said 6% went into equine and 3% went into food animal. And food animal could be working for the USDA, I assume, or being cattle or dairy vet. I don't know. But what really floored me was the 6% going into equine. That is a high number. According to the AAEP, it's 1.4% of all new graduates. So that brings it into the high 50s per graduating year right now. Whereas this article said 6%, which is 250, 300, depending on how many graduates are graduating. And either way, it's still a very low number overall. But still, as horse vets or horse owners, we have to be aware that the number of new graduates coming out who are going to replace our older veterinarians who are leaving the practice is really slim. What really fascinated me as an older vet, by the way, is that the established income on average is only $150,000. What this study showed was the income adjusted for inflation. So they went back to 2000, and the difference between starting salaries for a new veterinarian and the established veterinarian was 93%. So in other words, the new vet came in at about half of what the older vet was earning. That gap has narrowed to 19%. So now a new vet, just if you're using percentages, is approximately $80,000 for every $100,000 that an established vet has. Why is this? And I'm not sure, other than there's fewer and fewer older vets who are earning the largest salaries. They're leaving the practice. And most of the rest of the veterinarians who are around have only been in it for a few years. And they actually get into this a little bit later on in the article. And well, let me get there right now. They said 33% of all new grads are somewhere between 25 and 27 years old. That makes sense. They've gone through high school, then 4 years of undergraduate, and then 4 years veterinary school. So 18 plus 8 is about 26. So that just makes sense, right? But in the overall profession, only 8% are greater than 66 years old. And I fall into that category, with only 12% about, around 30, between the 30 and 60. So it seems like more and more veterinarians have left the practice of veterinary medicine, and they're being filled more and more with these younger vets who haven't earned as much. So I'm seeing that everywhere. It's rare that I see that equine vet that's in that 35 to 65 year gap. I just don't see them out there. They're mostly younger, certainly 30 to 35 or less. And I think that reflects in their experience, which goes back to my podcast on integrity. If all the older vets have left, where are they getting the knowledge to help become better veterinarians, equine veterinarians? I just don't think it's there. And the final thing about this article was the debt to income ratio, which is important because it was 1.4 to 1, meaning that your debt was 140,000 and your income was 100,000. So you have to work several years to pay it off. But the higher that ratio gets, like 2 to 1, that means your debt is 200,000 or 100,000, which means you have to work longer or charge more to get out of it in the same time. It's pure math. It turns out that 17% of all these new grads are somewhere between 1.5 and 2.0. And 13% are 2 to 2.5. And 12%, more than 12%, are at the 2.5 to 1 ratio, which again, just to put in some sort of number, they owe $250,000 for every $100,000 they earn. So the mean debt for just vet school, not undergraduate or anything else, their mean debt is $169,000. Now, that's a whole mortgage for a lot of house, well, very small house, but still, it's an incredible amount that you have to maintain, that you have to spend to become a veterinarian. Only 16.6% have no debt at all. Those lucky veterinarians who, for whatever reason, whether it's scholarships or they just had the money saved up or they had parents who could afford it, were able to get into veterinary school and not have any debt when they left. I wish I was one of those. But if you remove that 16.6% that don't have debt and then reapply it to the mean average, the mean average is $202,647. That's what the veterinarian who walks into your barn, newly graduated, owes on average for their educational expense. And if you take that out 10 years, and I'm not putting interest, I'm just dividing or multiplying by 10%, that's still over $20,000 per year that they have to pay back. That's in addition to all the other expenses of living. And that's so far beyond most people's means. 39% of all new graduates owe between $200,000 and $400,000, with 16.6% greater than $300,000. So there's a good chance that if a vet comes into your barn and is working on your horse and just graduated, they have a debt load of between $200,000 and $400,000. Which is incredible, but they're earning about $130,000. But from that, they have to take their food and shelter and all that stuff and pay off their debt, which is just making it harder and harder for most people to become a veterinarian. And somehow the numbers of new graduates is increasing. As I've said, they're projecting it to add 5,500 more new graduates. Somebody's making money off this, and it's not you. All right. The second article was about the mid-level practitioner in Colorado, which means that it will be legal in Colorado to take a master's course, which is not a veterinary degree, but it's not just your graduate. You have to achieve a master's. And they do this mostly through online training with very little hands-on training. And these people will come out of their online school able to do surgeries on your animal and to diagnose and to prescribe, which is basically what veterinarians do with a lot more training. And it's a fascinating battle that occurred in Colorado that just, November 5th, a national election, it was passed. It was Proposition, I think it's 129, Proposition 129, which is crazy. The VMAs of Colorado and the AVMA and all the veterinary organizations came out against this. They do not want this mid-level practitioner to come in. You have licensed animal health technicians, which in Colorado, they just expanded their ability to do things with a veterinarian. So they've developed these better teams to cover all the bases of what you need for your horse. But this mid-level practitioner has now been allowed to come in. And this may be a harbinger, which means it's premonition of what's going to come throughout the United States. But we have still got these mid-level practitioners out there that are unrecognized. So the veterinary profession has allowed, forgive me, farriers, for picking on you, but they've allowed you to come out and diagnose hoof ailments or other ailments and go ahead and apply a treatment. They've allowed non-veterinarian equine dentists to come out and to diagnose and apply a treatment. They've allowed body workers, chiropractics, to come out and adjust your horse without having a veterinary license. And those are just three that come off the top of my head that are already out there in a mid-level practice capacity, helping your horse become more healthy and without going to vet school. And I've been practicing dentistry since 1983 or 84 when I graduated. And I'm a whole lot better at it today than I was even 10 years ago. So time really helps. But did I need a veterinary education to do what I do? I don't believe so. I think the mid-level practitioner can take away a lot of the routine stuff and let the veterinarian focus on what they're really skilled at doing, the intricate surgeries, spays and neuters of dogs and cats. It's a very, I won't say a surgery that doesn't have complications. They do. And the risk for your pet succumbing to a complication is higher with a mid-level practitioner, which is why the veterinarian industry was saying, no, we shouldn't have these mid-level practitioners. But it's through this fear that something could go wrong, rather than embracing it and say, great, let's put these mid-level practitioners in the house of a full veterinarian, not allow them to work outside, and say, okay, I need you to do the spays and neuters. And if you have a complication, I'll be in the other room and I'll come in and fix it. But veterinarians are working so hard with all the increase in illnesses that we have in horses, the Cushing's disease, the metabolic syndrome, the laminitis that's occurring, the breakdown of the suspensories, the skin conditions that they're having. And I am saying to you directly, from me to you, the horse owner, there's a way that we could prevent these things by feeding our horses better so they're more robust, that they can live up to the problems that we see as veterinarians. If you go back 100 years ago, what did a horse vet take care of? Well, there were wrecks, horses ran into other horses in carriages, and they had broken legs, and they had, cuts that they needed, lacerations that needed suturing. But on occasion, did they have colic? Yes, on occasion. Looking through the textbooks, there were diseases. There was influenza and other diseases that came down the pike, but that probably could have been avoided with better, quote unquote, biosecurity. But they didn't have a lot of the other things that we see today. So there's a possibility, a way to get our horses healthier that would prevent a lot of these diseases and make them more robust and thrive in this human world that we have. But whether a mid-level practitioner is going to come to your state or not, I just don't know. But over 200 national and local vet, humane, and breeder organizations oppose Proposition 129. It's so radical. It's so different. But if you're a conservative, I'm sure you're going to say, I just want a veterinarian to work on my horse. If you're a progressive, you're going to say, yeah, but I'm spending a lot of money and I can't get a hold of that vet. And I'm in a part of the country where there's no equine veterinarian at all. I would love to have a mid-level practitioner who come out and maybe castrate my horse or maybe do some sort of chiropractic adjustment on my horse because I can't get the other people out there. The argument is huge and it's going to come out more and more over the next few years. And I want to make you all aware of what's happening today, what just happened in the last election cycle, that Colorado is opening the door. So by January of 2027, that's when the Colorado Veterinary Board has to come up with all the rules that define how they're going to allow these mid-level practitioners to come in, to be accredited, to be licensed, et cetera. So the door has been open. They're going to work on it. So by 2027, which is a little over 2 years from now, we're going to have a better understanding of this mid-level person in our veterinary field and how that'll affect you as a horse owner. Again, I really underline and bold type this message to you guys. Become a better advocate for your horse and help them become healthier to thrive in a human world. And your worry about who's going to come to help your horse will be mitigated by your knowledge of how to care for them in the first place. The final one was the Texas Appellate Court, Federal Appeals Court, overturning a ruling that a retired veterinarian had emailed someone and he gave his advice on how he would take care of this horse or animal, I should say. I'm not too sure if it was a horse or not. Just he gave advice on what to do in an email. And the Texas Veterinary Medical Board said there was no valid client-patient relationship. And their law, as in all states, requires that for you to diagnose and prescribe, you must physically have your eyeballs on the horse and your hands on the horse. And once you do that, then you can give advice. This veterinarian had emailed what he thought this person should do after receiving, I assume, this is all assumptions, that he had been given a request by email of what would you do if you saw this animal. And according to law, when somebody gives advice via email, it is a private communication. It is a First Amendment right to privacy of how you talk. And the Texas court said it doesn't matter, you have to have a VCPR. And the federal courts overturned it and said, no, it's protected under the First Amendment. He can give advice if he wants to without having a VCPR. Really interesting can of worms, because if these older vets who have retired but still want to help, want to mentor, and wants to give advice, how are they going to do this if they're looking over their shoulder and saying, am I being watched? And that's the way I am. In all my communications with you on these podcasts, I say, I am a veterinarian, but I'm not your veterinarian. You must contact him or her to seek medical advice on your horse. So I'm no different than a magazine you pick up that talks about laminitis or Cushing's or how to feed a horse or all that. It's just some advice that I'm giving out generally. And this is why I can't say, Susie, your horse looks like it's having this problem, and if I were you, I would do that. I would never do that. And this confirms that, even though I have the right to talk to you about it, I'm constantly looking over my shoulder because this war is not over. The veterinarians want to maintain their right to give you great advice based on what they see and what they feel. And it's my right to say how veterinarians respond to these certain circumstances may be correct or may be totally wrong. They're not taking into account better information that's out there. And I talk about this all the time. Someone's siloed and they only believe what they know. And I'm trying to expand that. So it gives me hope that through this means that I'm coming to you as a podcast, giving general advice about how things are, I'm going to be protected under the First Amendment. I have the right to do that. And we see this in newspapers and magazines all the time, that I can say, the sky really isn't blue. The sky is a different color. And you're looking at the sky and say, maybe he's right or maybe he's wrong. It provokes thought, which is what the Horse Advocate is all about, is to provoke thought and to help guide you to what I feel is a better life for horses, to make them healthier and happier. So I've spent enough time talking to you on these issues. We do have a crisis, not just in equine veterinary medicine, but I think in all veterinary medicine, that the profession is trying to throw mud on the wall, to patch up, to create an illusion that everything's fine. But through this, I think that they're missing the opportunity to mentor young vets. They're creating a financial gap between what people can afford and what veterinarians have to charge to meet the higher costs of education, which I think this mid-level is trying to eliminate, so they don't have to charge as much to do cheaper spays and neuters. And that just, throws up red flags everywhere in the veterinary community. So this podcast hasn't been to take a side. It's just to inform you that we're having a crisis everywhere. And I'm sure you see it in almost every other industry out there. And we have to, again, if you can learn how to do it yourself in your home repair of your house, to fix the sink or the toaster, if you can do that, it's taking away jobs from people who fix sinks. But on the other hand, that person is coming to fix your sink who really has more important plumbing issues that needs his expertise or her expertise. It allows them not to come out and unclog your drain if you just stop throwing stuff down your drain. I think that's a really great example. If you stop throwing garbage down your sink drain, it won't clog up, and therefore you won't need the plumber. If you feed your horses correctly and get away from all the potential things on your farm that could cause injury, well, the vet may not come out except once a year for a wellness exam and to give the immunizations that are necessary for your area. That's all you're going to see your vet. That's fine. It means you're healthy. If you're an older person, if you're 60, 70, 80 years old listening to this and you're healthy and you never see your physician maybe once a year, that's good. And your physician is more than happy to say, no, you're a picture of health. That's what all professionals really want. They want your animal to be healthy and yourself to be healthy. I plan to move on to some really interesting podcasts in the future. And that's what I really wanted to go over. I think I've got a whole list of podcasts here that I'm going to be working on, which is just going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to go into the 3 reasons for Cushing's disease, which is interesting. I'm going to go into a whole series on horsemanship. I'm going to find certain things that are going on with your horse and try to explain why they're happening and what we can do to prevent that. So that's the thrust of my podcast coming up. But thanks for listening to me on this. I'll try not to bring any more doom and gloom news about the veterinary profession, but it comes to my inbox almost every week. So it's my obligation to pass them on to you. Thank you for sticking with me, and I appreciate you spending your time here. Take care. Bye. Hey, everyone. Doc T here. Thank you for listening to my content. Would you do me a huge favor? Would you please subscribe, comment, like, thumbs up, and give a star review. However it's presented to you, I want you to do that. There are two reasons. The first, of course, is to improve this product. This way I know what you like, what you don't like, what I can improve upon, what topics you want me to cover. But more importantly, it's also going to help others find me. And by doing that, you are now engaged in this mission of helping horses thrive in a human world. By you helping, we can reach others. And that I would be so grateful for. And remember, go to thehorsesadvocate.com for updates on this information. Thehorsesadvocate.com. And again, thank you so much for being here. Doc T out.